Hey everybody, I'm Jesse, and welcome to another edition of Gen X Thinks. And today I'm going to talk about life before cell phones. Was it better or worse? The pros and cons of both. And I'll start out with the cons. Now, back then, before cell phones became a thing, and even computers and all that, we had to wait around for calls a lot, right? If somebody said, I'll call you this afternoon, well, you had to wait by the phone because the phone was hanging on a wall or sitting on a piece of furniture or something in the house. If you left the house and went off to do something, you'd miss the call. So if it was an important call that you really wanted, you had to stick around the house. There was no getting around it. You had to wait for that phone to ring. And a lot of times they just wouldn't call. You say, hey, I'll call you this afternoon or something, and then they get wrapped up doing some other shit or whatever, and they didn't call. So you'd sit there all afternoon and doing nothing, waiting on a call, and it never came. And that did kind of suck, And the second con really was there was less safety and ease when you're traveling, We had to have maps and pulling over and asking a gas station attendant or a store clerk or whatever, some stranger, for directions to some place was just a common thing. People were always asking for directions. In that way, it was more convenient and easier for a lot of people. A lot of people don't have a built-in sense of direction or know how to read a map really well. I grew up, my family moved all over the place, and we always had a big road map, so I learned how to read a road map at a very young age. I was in the Army and learned land navigation, so I was always very comfortable and at ease, finding my way around new places. It was just part of my growing up and part of my, experience in the Army. I have no problem going somewhere with just a map and directions, and I'll get there. But having said that, even I can have problems when with experience doing that kind of stuff. Even I can have problems when, road markers are knocked down and shit just wrong sometimes. So yeah, it can be a pain in the ass. So for most people in a lot of situations, that's an improvement. Just having a map, and something to guide you along the way is an improvement. I mean, back then, you could waste an entire day looking around, trying to find your way around, just lost, wandering around. When you're, on vacation, you're supposed to be enjoying yourself at some theme park or something, and you just can't find your way there. So yeah, that has made life quite a bit easier for a lot of people. But the main thing I hear the most is just how much easier life is now, right? Because before you would have to go to the bank to do your banking, and you'd have to go, just do things. You'd have to go walk out to the mailbox and put a letter in the mailbox and all this. And all this technology is supposed to save us time, okay? But we don't have any more time. It's not like we have 6 extra hours left in the day to do what we want. We're still busy as hell all the time. That hasn't changed at all. And I went to the bank, and I went to the mailbox, and I don't remember it being that difficult. I don't remember it being this onerous thing that we had to accomplish. And, I remember getting in the car and I sat down the whole way to the bank. The hardest part of going was walking across the parking lot to the bank doors. So it really wasn't that hard. I'm just saying. I know some of y'all, you don't miss those days, but it really wasn't that hard. We make it out like it was a big hard thing, uphill both ways to the bank, and we had to low crawl because under enemy fire, and we were dragging a an 80-pound sack of gold doubloons or something. And that's just not the way it was. It was paper cash. It was light as hell. We got in the car and we drove there with the air conditioning on. And, it wasn't that hard. Wasn't that big a deal. Before cell phones, it was easy. It was just part of life. Like eating dinner or going to the bathroom. It was just something that was done. It wasn't that big a deal. So, yeah, I don't get where people think that remember those things as being so hard. They weren't hard. I understand how these young kids think that it was hard. I get that. I can't imagine having to go to the bank. Oh, my God, I can't imagine, you had to lick the envelope and take it clear out to the end of the driveway and put it in the box and, and pull the flag up. Oh my God, that just sounds exhausting. That kind of stuff. I get the kids thinking that way because they've never lived that life. But for us and for boomers to be crying about that shit, how hard it was back then. I mean, come on. It wasn't hard. It just wasn't. I'm sorry. It wasn't hard. Some of it was a pain in the ass with the maps and getting lost. Yeah, it was a pain in the ass. It was a pain in the ass waiting around for somebody to call you. Yeah, it was a pain in the ass, but it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard. Life was not hard. The hard part about life was not having enough money or enough to eat or something like that, which is still a problem today. This technology, these cell phones haven't fixed any real problems, in civilized life in our society. Haven't given us more time, more food, more money, and nothing. They've just made things more convenient. And convenient is not the same as easy or less difficult. It's just more convenient. Now on to the pros of life without cell phones. Okay, number one was the freedom. Just the ever-loving, complete freedom. When you left the house, no one was going to bug you. Your phone, your pocket wasn't going to start making noises and insisting that you get in a conversation with somebody. You can just go out with your friends and do whatever, right? At whatever age we were. When we were kids, we went out with our friends and rode bikes and went fishing or whatever. When we were young adults, we went out with our friends and went to clubs or whatever we did. And nobody was going to bother you. Nobody was going to insist on talking to you and stopping you from doing what you were doing. That's just something that I don't like about this day and age, this cell phone shit. Just someone can just reach into your moment and interrupt you no matter what you're doing, and expect you to respond, expect you to contact them, right? And they get upset if you don't answer the text right away, or if you don't pick up the phone, answer the phone. And that is something I miss from the old days, that you could just walk away and you went to work and nobody bothered you. Like if you were working on a construction site, you went to work all day and you didn't have to think about anything else except what you were doing. Nobody could interrupt you and bother you with other thoughts and other crap. You were just at work. So yeah, that freedom is something I miss. And another thing is the face-to-face contact, most of our conversations, most of our interactions took place face-to-face. They were real. They were honest. And even if someone was being dishonest, you could see it, There was less misunderstanding. There's a lot of misunderstanding in text. I see a lot of misunderstanding in the comments, Someone will type something to me and I'll just misunderstand it because I won't get the nuances of the tone of their voice and stuff. It's just flat out text on there, and I'll just read it the wrong way, not the way they meant. So there's that kind of stuff allows for a lot of misunderstandings, where in face-to-face conversation, there were still misunderstandings, but there was a lot less of that, and just a look on your face would tell someone that you misunderstood them. If somebody says something weird and you're like, like that, and they're like, "What? Wait, you're misunderstanding me, dude. I meant such and such." Now, in this today's age of communication, we don't have that direct, instant feedback, right? You've got to look at the text, read it, or listen to their voice or whatever, voicemail and all this stuff, and even just talking on the phone as much as we do now. Instead of face to face, you don't get body language and facial expressions and stuff. You just don't get that. And that face to face interaction, losing that, has caused a lot of misunderstanding and confusion, I believe, right? Just and unnecessarily so. It's just not, we don't need it. We could have just stuck with it, with what we had. And in all honesty, we could have all of the same technologies that we have now, but we could have just kept them in the computer. We could text and all that stuff. You could text somebody, and then when they get home, they check their computer, they check their email, they check their text, they check everything, and everything could have just been on a computer and stationary at the house. That way you could get instant feedback if they were there at their computer, but if they walked away from it, they wanted to be alone, they could be alone. You couldn't pester them with texts and emojis and all this shit, you know what I mean? So I think that a lot of that has to do more with social media, though. Yeah, social media has had as big an impact as the cell phones themselves. Social media has done a lot to foster a lot of that constant interaction, because you're all constantly looking for, well, some people are, I'm not, but constantly looking for likes and shit on Facebook or whatever. Closest I come to that is my YouTube analytics. I check them, and I got to check the comments to see if someone has commented to me or something. But that's the closest I come to that. So I can kind of understand, though, you get wrapped up in that stuff, and especially as these kids do, get wrapped up in shit, and they constantly want to be reassured and validated and all this other bullshit. So social media is something I think that should have just been left at the house. You check on it when you get home or whatever, and then you just leave it at the house. It's not something we should have been carrying around in our pockets this whole time, just following us around 24/7. And now they're putting this technology everywhere, okay? In your refrigerator, in your car. I mean, you can't, even if you want to leave it behind, leave your phone behind, it's in your damn car. And if you got a new car, it's in your damn car. So, I just think that the privacy, and the face-to-face communication, those are the two of the most important things. And thing that we don't think about very often is, with all this convenience, it's leading to a sedentary lifestyle. We're spending a lot more time sitting on the couch, just, I'll just send an email or whatever, or I'll just fill this form out on my phone, or, all that shit, instead of getting up and burning, 90 calories, walking to the mailbox, or burning a couple hundred calories, going up and going grocery shopping or going to the bank or whatever. We were burning more calories. We were exercising more back then. And I think that was better for our overall health. Just, getting even just that little bit more exercise, because a lot of people just don't do that. They just, everything's done online now. And I think even though it is more convenient to do it online, it's not necessarily better for us. It's just not. I think that we were healthier back then. And that's another thing. That's a whole different topic about the food we used to eat compared to the chemicals we eat now. So even McDonald's and stuff had actual food back then. Nowadays, it's just completely different. Another pro non cell phone life without cell phones, was that we didn't have this addictive device, because the entire internet is on this damn thing, right? So it can be addictive because you can find whatever you want on there. If you're into, astrophysics, you can sit there and just veg out on astrophysics all day long. If you're into, Westerns, you can sit there and just watch Westerns all day long. If you're into Facebook or Instagram or what the hell ever, you can just veg out on that shit all day long. Whatever, it's got every single thing you can think of on there to suit your taste. So there's an unlimited supply of shit to attract your attention. And back in the day, we didn't have that. So we had to go make stuff up, go play Dungeons and Dragons and use our imaginations and, just invent stuff, use our own creativity and do things that exercised our mind, not just vegetable, drooling on a screen all day, that kind of stuff. So I think that was actually better back then because we didn't have that constant allure, that constant addiction to something in our pockets, except for Big League Chew, where we had our Big League Chew. But other than that, we went out and just had fun. Kids just don't have fun anymore. They just sit there and stare at a screen the whole time. So, yeah, overall, I think that life was better without cell phones. And it could have stayed that way if they would have just left the technology in the house and not made it so portable. But of course, that's not what they wanted. They wanted to track us and, monitor everything so they could feed us these personalized ads and all this stuff. So, I understand why the technology went the way it did. I just think it would have been better for us human beings if it had, the technology had marched forward but stayed in the house, not been so mobile. And let me know what you think about this. What do you think about cell phones? Are you on the side where you just, everything's so much easier now? It was so hard back in the old days that you couldn't stand it, or are you like me and you yearn for the old days, the freedom and the privacy? And tomorrow's episode, I'll be talking about Florida Man. I've had a couple of people ask me about Florida Man, so I'm gonna make a video kind of explaining Florida Man for everybody and giving you some examples. So that's gonna be a fun episode. So be sure and check out tomorrow's episode about Florida Man. And I'll leave you there with that. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and comment. If you want to support the channel by becoming a member, I'll put that link down in the description, or you can head over to the channel page and become a member that way. If you'd like to support the channel directly, you can do so by clicking on that super thanks button down there. Or you can head over to Buy Me a Cup of Coffee and buy me a cup of coffee. I appreciate those of you who do that. Thank you very much. I'll leave that link down in the description as well. If you're interested in Gen X gear, we got some pretty cool stuff over there at Redbubble. Gen X Thinks and Gen X branded stuff, t-shirts, coffee mugs, stickers, all kinds of cool stuff. But I'll leave that link down in the description for those of you who are interested. If you can or don't want to support the channel in any of those ways, you can always do so by sharing these videos on your social media. That helps out a hell of a lot, so thank you very much to those of you who do that. I really do appreciate it. If you have any ideas for future episodes of Gen X Thinks, please put those down in the comments, or you can email us, and the email is genxthinks@gmail.com. And as always, stay frosty, Gen X, and I'll see you on the next one.